So now there's also this new congressional report that's been released by the House Armed Services Committee on the prisoner trade that led to his release. This does not bode well for the administration, does it?
Well, the report was written by the Republican majority of the House Armed Services Committee, Gretchen, and it claims they were misled by the administration about the swap, which led to the release of 5 Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo Bay. Quote, the committee was misled about the extent and scope of efforts to arrange the Taliban 5 transfer before it took place. The Department of Defense's failure to communicate complete and accurate information severely harmed its relationship with the committee. The House Armed Services chair, Buck McKeon, was given only 2 hours notice before the release of the so-called Taliban 5, despite a law that required 30 days. The report reveals that a signing ceremony with the government of Qatar, who agreed to take the prisoners, took place 2 weeks before their release. The report is now available publicly, and Chairman Mac Thornberry of the House Armed Services Committee will be on special report tonight, Gretchen.
We told you a moment ago about concerns. A prisoner released from Guantanamo Bay has returned to the battlefield in Yemen. Let's get more on the recidivism issue and new charges that President Obama broke the law when the Taliban 5 deal happened. Joining us now, House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mac Thornberry. Mr. Chairman, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
The president broke the law. Explain that.
Yeah. The law says before you transfer any detainee out of Guantanamo, you got to give Congress 30 days notice. They transferred the 5 Taliban prisoners in exchange for Bergdahl and gave nobody in Congress notice. More than that, they intentionally misled Congress and said, we are not negotiating, we're not looking at a trade, and now we see the emails and communications that show that they intentionally were misleading Congress. And if you mislead Congress, you're misleading the American people, and in this case, it also violates the law.
So what's the fallout? What's the repercussion?
Well, we're discussing how we handle the Department of Defense, the administration going forward. You know, the administration likes to say, oh, this is no big deal. You've got to obey the laws, even if you're the president, even if it's inconvenient. And to have this not only ignoring the law, but intentionally misleading Congress by saying we're not negotiating, et cetera, when there actually are, is disturbing. Here's the other fallout. 5 dangerous men in Guantanamo that they were having a hard time getting rid of. You know, they had already had an assessment that they were too dangerous to release. Those 5 guys have now been released. And so a logical conclusion is this was part of the administration's efforts to clear everybody out of Guantanamo regardless of the cost, even if they violate the law.
One quick question about Bergdahl. He's now out telling his story in this podcast, Serial, and what about this whole thing that he walked off because of stress of the situation? You know this story better than many.
Well, I do know some of the story, but I also know that he is under this disciplinary procedure through the Pentagon, and so our investigation did not look at the Bergdahl conduct. We only looked at what the administration did in trading these 5 dangerous Taliban terrorists for Bergdahl, and so that's what this report focused on.
All right, on Gitmo, you have this recidivism issue, and now someone we let go from Guantanamo Bay leading al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, in Yemen.
It's kind of surprising that the administration would say, well, we don't really know that he's re-engaged when he's in a video by al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the most dangerous affiliate these days of al-Qaeda. On average, about 1/3 of the people who have been released from Guantanamo, we have evidence have re-engaged. Now, we don't know how many we don't have evidence for, but about 1/3 have re-engaged with evidence.
All right, here is Josh Earnest today on this issue of Guantanamo Bay.
Any report about a former Gitmo detainee re-engaging in the fight would be a source of significant concern and something that we would take quite seriously. You know, based on what we know so far, more than 90% of those who have been transferred from Guantanamo Bay have not re-engaged in the fight, but we are certainly paying close attention, even if we find unconfirmed reports about those who may have.
Your reaction to that?
Well, 90% is clearly wrong. He must be defining it in some particular time frame that I don't understand. It's about a third if you look over the history of Gitmo. Secondly, there is a lot of concern by members of Congress that the Taliban 5 that were traded for Bergdahl may have re-engaged as well. So there is a pattern here that these are dangerous folks, and if you're trying to get them out of Guantanamo at any cost, you are increasing the danger to the country.
I want to ask you about this investigation into ISIS intel. I know you're very concerned about it, as are a number of Republicans on the Hill. It seems like it's expanding, like it's going to have multiple committees, like there will be a task force of sorts. Is that true?
That's true. And really it's multiple committees working together. So as you know, some whistleblowers have come forward and said...
And they've come forward to your committee?
We have talked to a variety of people, and the allegation is that intelligence about ISIS was intentionally changed to make ISIS look better than it is. And so the House Intelligence Committee, House Armed Services Committee, Appropriations Subcommittee, as well as the Senate Armed Services Committee are working together. Now, there's an Inspector General investigation. We don't want to mess that up. But at the same time, we're not going to wait till they conclude. This is a very serious matter that we have an obligation to get into.
Are Democrats on board with this?
They are. They are participating in the investigation. Their staff have been involved in the discussions that we have had with a variety of folks from CENTCOM and elsewhere. So again, we want to be careful and do it right, but it's important.
Steve Hayes and others have reported on the bin Laden documents and the fact that they haven't been mined for intel. Obviously, you have the ISIS allegations. Will it kind of roll everything together?
Well, we may go in that direction. I know there has been concern from his reporting and others that we have not gotten all of the information we could from the bin Laden documents, and they've been hidden from being able to be analyzed. So I can't tell you exactly where this is going to go, but it is very important that intelligence reflect the facts and not any sort of slant, not any sort of bias, not any sort of political pressure that can come from up above.
Quickly, Mr. Chairman, will Congress pass an AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force against ISIS?
I don't know. I think we should. I think there's a lot of concern that the President doesn't believe in the mission, so there are a number of members who don't want to vote to authorize it if you don't have a Commander-in-Chief who's going to stand by it. On the other hand, I think the Constitution puts that responsibility on our shoulders, and we're having those discussions now to see what members could vote for.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the